Welcome. This is Monty once again from DPL Surveillance Equipment. We're a full-service surveillance and security equipment company. We have lifetime guarantees and warranties on all the products. We have 24/7, 365 tech sales and customer support. We have perhaps the largest inventory of items that not only can you buy, but you can rent or lay away as well. A lot of customers use our rental program as a rent-to-own program or try before you buy program. So that's a good way of familiarizing yourself with this new state-of-the-art lifetime guaranteed and warranty technology that we have. Our law enforcement grade products are something that we've been putting a lot of emphasis on as far as letting consumers and such get access to the same type of technology that law enforcement people get access to. In addition to that, the layaway program, I think, is a very creative financing solution that we've come up with as well at DPL Surveillance Equipment. A lot of customers appreciate the layaway program, mainly because it allows you to creatively finance. In other words, you choose the number of weeks or months that you're gonna where you're gonna allow us to charge your credit card. So you come up with the terms. Basically, you tell us how much money per week or month that you're gonna allow us to charge to your card. And if you want to pay it off within 1 month, 6 months, or even a year, that's fine with us. One second. So yeah, the layaway program is an ideal, essential tool for those people who want to use that as a way of financing their purchase. So whether it's a bug detector, whether it's a nanny camera, whether it's a audio bug, otherwise known as listening devices, including digital video recorders and voice recorders, take advantage of the layaway program and finance those purchases, okay, over, again, weeks or months, doesn't matter. And we also are putting a lot of emphasis on anti-terrorist products. There's a number of, unfortunately, there's a number of situations going on around the world where people are very uncomfortable. Countries seem to be apprehensive about who's going to work with who and what the new administration is going to do or not do. So this is a fertile breeding ground. Hi, Carolyn. This is a fertile breeding ground for people who want to take advantage. You know, the terrorists of the world. They like to see, uncertainty, chaos, and confusion. So that's where they take advantage. So anyway, if you're responsible for protecting federal buildings, post offices, ports and harbors and airports, embassy buildings, etc., give us a call, and we can talk to you about the X-ray baggage scanners, our state-of-the-art narcotics detectors, in addition to the explosive detectors. And check out the video library, you guys, while you're at it. We're increasingly adding more and more videos so you can see us demonstrate all of these products. And we have a huge and growing articles directory. Go to the articles directory and learn about electronic harassment and prevention, learn about cell phone interception and spy phone prevention, learn whether or not GPS jammers and blockers are legal or not. There's all sorts of things to take advantage of and to learn about there. And you targeted individuals and you electronically harass people and people suffering from electrical hypersensitivity. I think you're going to appreciate a lot of the articles that we're adding to the articles directory. And if you have any questions regarding any of these products or any of those technologies that I mentioned, give us a call, 888-344-3742. That's 888-344-3742. As I mentioned, we're available 24/7, 365. Now, this particular session is all about our CyberSecurity Newsflash. We've done up to, amazingly done up to 15 episodes of the CyberSecurity Newsflash. We're at episode number 15, and the name of this particular episode is Next Target for Hackers is Your Brain. Again, next target for hackers is your brain. So let's get right into it, okay? Marc Salem, born Moshe Botwinick to Jewish parents, is an American mentalist and mind reader from Philadelphia and is qualified in nonverbal communication. He has a number of books out, The 6 Keys to Unlock and Empower Your Mind, Spot Liars and Cheats, and, Negotiate Any Deal to Your Advantage, Win at the Office, Influence Friends, and much more. Mind reading, okay? According to Salem, most of the people do not absorb the majority of information that is available to them in their day-to-day lives. This is especially true when people are involved in a game such as poker. No matter how good an opponent is, there will always be some leakage of information given off by the body. If there is an attempt to hold it in somewhere, it will escape somewhere else. The numerous interactions that go on around people often don't even enter their field of understanding. Salem states that if we can train ourselves to let people in and then correctly interpret the information that is available, we can gain a tremendous advantage in a situation. There are 3 basic mind tools needed in learning how to read people and detect deception. Observing means to closely watch for the visual ingredients, the visual ingredients of deception, and learn how to recognize facial expression, body language, gestures. The second step is listening effectively for what normally goes on unheard. It means a system for picking up vocal tones, sudden changes, unconscious sounds, and word choices and silences should be developed. Lastly, the information has to be interpreted, meaning comparing current behavior to what has been seen and heard before. Finding inconsistency in an action is the challenge and the key. And inconsistency is often more significant than the action itself. Salem is not a mind reader or magician, but he is able to pay close attention to people's body language. Now, I saw Marc Salem do a number of demonstrations. Basically, Marc Salem is a very qualified individual, and we'll get into his training. But basically, what he's doing now is he's going on road shows, and he's showing people, particularly expert poker players, because they are the people that you would normally associate with being able to hide their thoughts and feelings and emotions. Because when you play poker, if someone can read what's known as your tail or signs of what you're thinking, then they know how to bet against you, right? So poker players are supposedly some of the more experienced people who can hide their feelings and emotions and thoughts. But what Marc Salem did in one particular demonstration, which is very eye-opening, he was able to tell every poker player at the table what cards they were thinking about, just based upon the poker players quickly reading certain cards and then supposedly hiding their thoughts from Marc. But Marc correctly identified all of the individuals' cards when Marc went through and told them, or asked them, what cards were they trying to hide, and verify that this was correct. It's very, very revealing. Kinesics. Salem also worked for 4 years directly with Ray Birdwistell, the founder of kinesics. I think that's how you pronounce it. Kinesics, who published a major work called Kinesics in Context, which is still considered the preeminent work on the subject of nonverbal communication. More recently, Salem has been using his skill as an expert in kinesics, commonly referred to as body language, and his uncanny understanding of the mental processes to facilitate to fascinate audiences around the world. Even though he spends a lot of time on the stage, he is also in great demand as a public speaker and continues to educate lawyers, politicians, and public servants in the minute nuances of voice and movement that reveal our thoughts to those around us. Education. Salem holds a doctorate in education from New York University and a PhD in developmental psychology from the University of Pennsylvania. He has been on the faculty of NYU, UP, Manhattan College, and Marymount Manhattan College. He was also a director of research at the Children's Television Workshop for over 9 years, studying the nature and development of the mental processes. Moving right along, a little device that's trying to read your thoughts. Already surrounded by machines that allow him painstakingly to communicate, the physicist Stephen Hawking last summer donned what looked like a rakish black headband that held a feather-light device the size of a small matchbox called the iBrain. This simple-looking contraption is part of an experiment that aims to allow Dr. Hawking, long paralyzed by amyotrophic lateral sclerosis or Lou Gehrig's disease, to communicate by merely thinking. The iBrain is part of a new generation of portable neural devices and algorithms intended to monitor and diagnose conditions like sleep apnea, depression and autism, invented by a team. The disorders are sleep apnea, depression, and autism, invented by a team led by Philip Lowe, a 32-year-old neuroscientist who is chief executive of Neurovigil, a company based in San Diego. The iBrain is gaining attention as a possible alternative to expensive sleep labs that use rubber and plastic caps riddled with dozens of electrodes and usually require a patient to stay overnight. The iBrain can collect data in real time in a person's own bed when they're watching TV or doing just about anything, Dr. Lowe said. The device uses a single channel to pick up waves of electrical brain signals which change with different activities and thoughts, or with the pathologies that accompany brain disorders. But the raw waves are hard to read because they must pass through the many folds of the brain and then the skull. So they are interpreted with an algorithm that Dr. Lowe first created for his PhD, earned in 2007 at the University of California, San Diego. The original research published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences was done on zebra finches, that's a type of bird. About the Hawking experiment, he said, the idea is to see if Stephen can use his mind to create a consistent and repeatable pattern that a computer can translate into, say, a word or letter or command for a computer. The researchers traveled to Dr. Hawking's offices in Cambridge, England, fitted him with the iBrain headband, and asked him to imagine that he was scrunching his right hand into a ball. Dr. Lowe said, of course, he can't actually move his hand, but the motor cortex in his brain can still issue the command and generate electrical waves in his brain. The algorithm, called Spears, was able to discern Dr. Hawking's thoughts as signals, which were represented as a series of spikes on the grid. We wanted to see if there was any change in the signal, Dr. Lowe said, and in fact, we did see a change in the signal. Neurovigil plans to repeat the study in large populations of patients with ALS and other neurodegenerative diseases. These preliminary results come as Dr. Hawking's ability to communicate diminishes as his disease progresses. The 70-year-old physicist, whose mind has produced crucial insights into theoretical physics, as well as the bestseller A Brief History of Time, now needs several minutes to generate a simple message. He uses a pair of infrared glasses that picks up twitches in his cheek. His team in Cambridge, England, has dubbed this the cheek switch. Dr. Lowe and his company have done some outstanding work in this field, Dr. Hawking said in a statement. I am participating in this project and hope that I can offer insights and practical advice to Neurovigil. I wish to assist in research, encourage investment in this area, and most importantly, to offer some future hope to people diagnosed with ALS and other neurodegenerative conditions. The physicist has also worked with other inventors to better elucidate his thoughts. Engineers at the semiconductor and computing giant Intel recently hooked up a customized computer to communicate with his cheek-reading infrared glasses. Excuse me. Along with a voice synthesizer, a webcam for using Skype, and special monitors, Intel is developing new face recognition software that can monitor subtle changes in expression and may help Dr. Hawking communicate more effectively. Scientists not connected with Dr. Lowe say they are encouraged by the iBrain's potential. Philip Lowe's device is one of the best single-channel brain monitors out there, said Ruth O'Hara, an associate professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at Stanford University Medical School. She plans to use the iBrain for autism studies. Neurovigil has not said what the device will cost. I can't speak to the veracity of his latest data, which has not been published, Dr. O'Hara added, but the preliminary data I have seen is compelling. It could be a significant contribution to the field as a window into brain architecture. Dr. Terry Hyman Patterson, a neurologist and ALS specialist at the Drexel University College of Medicine, said she was in discussions with Neurovigil to use the device on ALS patients to see how they fared with it in comparison with instruments that use multiple channels and electrodes. Dr. Lowe is researching signals that look for intent, which is becoming very exciting because it looks like they may be able to do it. For Stephen Hawking and for others with ALS, Dr. Hyman Patterson said, patients want to be able to communicate beyond the yes or no with an eye blink. They want to send an email, turn off the light, and even more, to have a meaningful conversation. Monitors like the iBrain are also being used to assess whether experimental neurological drugs are working in clinical trials. In 2009, Neurovigil completed a deal with the drug giant Hoffmann-La Roche to test the iBrain. Neither company has released details of their early tests. Neurovigil's strategy, Dr. Lowe said, is to run clinical trials with Roche and other partners in industry and academia, and to seek approval from the Food and Drug Administration. Other companies also make single-channel brain monitors, but unlike Neurovigil, they sell the devices and software directly to consumers online. Zio, that's Zebra, Elephant, Oscar. Zio, for example, based in Massachusetts, concentrates on measuring sleep patterns through a smartphone app or a clock radio device, available for $99 and $143 respectively. Emotive, that's E-M-O-T-I-V, Emotive Systems in San Francisco offers Epoch headset. That's called Epoch, which is a headset for $299 plus a range of apps and add-ons that include neurofeedback, 3D brain imaging tools, and games like Angry Birds, all using a combination of thoughts and facial muscle movements recorded by several electrodes that are in contact with a customer's head. We have no plans to take an academic route, said Zio's chief executive, Dave Dickinson, who added that his company's customers had logged 1 million hours of sleep time. He would not say how many devices had been sold. Emotive was founded in 2003 and has reportedly shipped 10,000 devices. Dr. Lowe plans to team up again with Dr. Hawking this summer in Cambridge to present their initial data at a neuroscience meeting in early July. Neurovigil will continue to work with Dr. Hawking and his team to refine their technology to decipher signals generated by Dr. Hawking's thoughts. At the moment, I think my cheek switch is faster than the brain-computer interface, Dr. Hawking said in an email sent by an assistant. But should the position change, I will try Philip Lowe's system. Much work remains, however, including the integration of Dr. Hawking's brain waves with the computers and devices that allow him to communicate. Wouldn't it be wonderful, Dr. Lowe said, to have a mind like Stephen Hawking's be able to communicate even a little bit better? So far we're looking at the ability to, well, particularly with Dr. Lowe's technology, basically allowing you to have a computer to brain interface that doesn't require that you go to a research facility and sleep overnight, and it's indeed a single channel type of technology that reads the brain signals and consistent with the title of this particular CyberSecurity Newsflash, we just want to make sure you guys understand that these are technologies that, if used correctly, degenerative neural disorders and such like ALS and stuff like that, ALS and some of the other neurodegenerative diseases, they can very well be treated a lot more effectively with these type of technologies, but particularly something that's going to be portable and that's going to be brought within the affordability of most of the people. So this is a very competitive field, and it looks like the iBrain and Zio, which is, again, based in Massachusetts, using a smartphone app or a clock radio device, selling for $99 and $143, depending upon, how many add-ons or whatever you get. Emotive Systems in San Francisco, using their headset for $299, and a range of apps and add-ons and that allow you to do neurofeedback, 3D brain mapping, and in addition to these other things, recognizing your facial muscle movements, and et cetera, et cetera. These are all cutting-edge technologies, and it just goes to show our brains are really the next frontier, and a lot of these devices are reading the electrical activity in the brain and displaying it for you and anyone else to see how you're thinking, so you can use it as a way of getting feedback from your own brain. So I think in the very near future, we're going to have a number of different devices that are going to detect, read out, map out, show you in high graphic colors, etc., etc., what your brain is doing when you think about this, think about that, sleeping, whatever, reacting angrily, reacting happily. Very, very cutting-edge technologies, very exciting futures. Let's move right on, okay? Right along and see what else we can find. Brain decoding, reading minds, okay? Jack Gallant can read your mind, or at least he can figure out what you're seeing if you're in his machine watching a movie he's playing for you. Gallant, which is spelled Gallant, a researcher at the University of California, Berkeley, has a brain decoding machine, a device that uses brain scanning to peer into people's minds and reconstruct what they're seeing. If mind-reading technology like this becomes more common, should we be concerned? Ask Gallant this question, and he gives a rather unexpected answer. In Gallant's experiment, people were shown movies while the team measured their brain patterns. An algorithm then uses those signals to reconstruct a fuzzy composite image drawing on a massive database of YouTube videos. Let me read that again. An algorithm then uses those signals to reconstruct a fuzzy composite image is drawing on a massive database of YouTube videos. In other words, they took brain activity and turned it into pictures revealing what a person was seeing. Science or not, the machine strokes the dystopian futurists among people who fear that the government could one day tap into our innermost thoughts. This may seem like a silly fear, but Gallant says it's not. I actually agree that you should be afraid, he says, but you don't have to be afraid for another 50 years. It would take that long to solve two of the big challenges in brain reading technology: the portability and the strength of the signal. Right now, in order for Gallant to read your thoughts, you have to slide into a functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI machine, a huge, expensive device that measures where the blood is flowing in the brain. While fMRI is one of the best ways to measure the activity of the brain, it's not perfect, nor is it portable. Subjects in an fMRI machine can't move, and the devices are expensive and huge. And while comparing the brain image and the movie image side by side makes their connection apparent, the image that Gallant's algorithm can build from brain signals isn't quite like peering into a window. The resolution on fMRI scans simply isn't high enough to create something that generates a clear picture. Until somebody comes up with a method for measuring brain activity better than we can today, there won't be many portable brain decoding devices that will be built for general use, he says. Okay, before we read along, I just want to let you guys know there is a company in Germany who has a briefcase size fMRI technology. So it looks like the portability is definitely being worked on, and as far as we can tell, someone has come up with something that's indeed portable, and so this is why we have to continually update these the information in our even in our own cybersecurity newsflash, because every day, every week, month that passes by, some new technology, some new advancement is going to take place. So moving right along, Dream Reader. While Galant isn't working on trying to build any more decoding machines, others are. One team in Japan is currently trying to make a dream reader using the same fMRI technique, but unlike in the movie experiment where researchers know what the person is seeing and can confirm the image in the brain readouts, dreams are far trickier. To try and train the system, researchers put subjects in an fMRI machine and let them slip into that weird state between wakefulness and dreaming. They then wake up the subject and ask what they had seen. Using that information, they could correlate the reported dream images, everything from ice picks to keys to statues, to train the algorithm. Using this database, the Japanese team was able to identify around 60% of the types of images dreamers saw. But there's a key hurdle between these experiments and a universal dream decoder. Each dreamer's signals are different. Right now, the decoder has to be trained to each individual. So even if you're willing to sleep in an fMRI machine, there's no universal decoder that can reveal your nightly adventures. Even though he's not working on one, Galant knows what kind of brain decoder he might build, should he choose to. My personal opinion is that if you wanted to build the best one, you would decode covert internal speech. If you could build something that takes internal speech and translates into external speech, he says, then you could use it to control a car. It could be a universal translator. Inner speech. Some groups are edging closer to this goal. A team in the Netherlands, for instance, scanned the brains of bilingual speakers to detect the concepts each participant were forming, such as the idea of a horse, a cow, correctly identifying the meaning, whether the subjects were thinking in English or Dutch. Like the dream decoder, however, the system needs to be trained on each individual, so it is a far cry from a universal translator. If nothing else, the brain reader has sparked more widespread interest in Galant's work. If I go up to someone on the street and tell them how their brains work, their eyes glaze over. He says, and when he shows them a video of their brains actually at work, they start to pay attention. So moving right along, Chris Burka, monitoring your brain. Chris Burka is the CEO and co-founder at Advanced Brain Monitoring, or ABM. She has more than 25 years experience managing clinical research and developing and commercializing new technologies. She is the co-inventor of 9 patented and 11 patent pending technologies, and is the principal investigator or co-investigator for grants and contracts awarded by the National Institutes of Health, DARPA, ONR, and NSF. I think that's the National Science Foundation, that provided more than $22 million of research funds to ABM. So just so you guys will know, I think Chris Burka seems to be one of the more notable people that is actually doing some things that are really captivating. I watched her in action, and it looks like this lady is really going to make a very significant contribution when it comes to reading the brain and understanding it, and doing something practical, coming out with practical solutions that we all could use. Chris Burka talks about how you can use advanced brain monitoring technology to improve your mental and physical performance. Getting into the zone. This amazing new discovery will surprise you. Neuroscience is the study of our brain-based nervous system. Neuroscience, along with neuromessaging, are considered the next major frontiers of human-focused discovery. Did you know that neuroscience has the potential of changing your life more dramatically than you ever imagined? we are already becoming more and more aware of how our mind and thoughts impact every aspect of our lives, from health and wellness to learning, financial success, and of course, sports. To quote Napoleon Hill from his book, Think and Grow Rich, what we think about, we bring about. It turns out that Mr. Hill, along with Einstein, our imagination is a preview of things to come, have both discovered an important aspect of how our thoughts impact our lives. A closer look at what is going on around us will help illustrate how neuroscience is gaining more interest and importance in our lives. It's hard to miss the brain enhancement tools like Luminosity focused on training our brains are being advertised on TV or hot new TV shows such as Brain Games or Dr. Daniel Amen's PBS show on how the brain ages, or Morgan Freeman's Through the Wormhole, Hacking the Brain on the Discovery Channel have become mainstream. Even our U.S. government recognizes the major importance of gaining more knowledge about our brain-based nervous system and has launched an aggressive 10-year brain mapping program, the Brain Initiative. Brain research through advanced, innovative neurotechnologies, also referred to as the Brain Activity Map Project, was announced by President Obama April 2nd, 2013. Based on the Human Genome Project, the goal is to map the activity of every neuron in the human brain. This collaborative research project has been projected to cost $300 million per year for the next 10 years. Prestigious institutions and individuals have already formed a working group of advisors that include the Salk Institute, Stanford University, Howard Hughes Medical Institute, DARPA, NIH, NSF, along with Google, Microsoft, and Qualcomm, and many other groups. The Brain Initiative, with its massive government funding, is destined to provide extensive amounts of new insights and knowledge about the brain and how it works. Google, an odd but not unexpected new player with an interest in improving lives and increasing mental agility, has launched their newly funded company, Calico. Arthur Levinson, the chairman of Genentech and Apple, along with Google Ventures, funded this visionary company, which is interested in a holistic approach towards health with a focus on researching new technology, anti-aging, for improving health. With our aging population, dementia and Alzheimer's that impact our brain and mind has become a more frequent topic of discussion and has reached a high level of interest for almost everyone. Entirely new dementia affecting younger individuals in their teens and early 20s, which first reported in June 2013 in digital dementia. Digital dementia is brought on by excessive use of digital technology such as computers, smartphones, and the internet. Heavy users are more likely to overdevelop their left brain, leaving their right brains undeveloped. The left side of the brain is generally associated with rational thought, numerical computation, and fact-finding, while the right side of the brain is responsible for creative and emotional thoughts. If the right brain remains underdeveloped in the long term, it can lead to the early onset of dementia. According to experts, digital dementia has become a significant problem in South Korea that has the largest population of internet users. Common symptoms of digital dementia include memory problems, shortened attention spans, and emotional flattening. Many experts have called for this internet addiction to be classified as a mental disorder and that it should be treated as a major public health issue. The brain, our next frontier. The brain has two hemispheres. One, which is on the right side, has been determined to host the more intuitive, visual, creative thoughts and ideas, while the other side, the left side, tends to be the source of logical, sequential, and language-based mental activities. Think of it as having an artist and an accountant constantly expressing themselves in your head. and with a discussion hopefully leading toward a unified outcome. All of us work in both modes, but frequently we tend to have an overall lean towards one or the other. Understand our brain is cross-wired to our body. Hence, the right brain controls our left appendages and vice versa. This fact will help clarify what I'm about to share with you next. There is a series of tales that will indicate which side of the brain you may favor. One such tale is to clasp your hands together, interlacing your fingers. Now observe which thumb is on top. People who place their right thumb on top of the left thumb tend to be left brain dominant and thus tend to be more verbal and analytical. Those placing their left thumb on top of their right thumb tend to be more right brain dominant and thus might excel in visual, spatial, and intuitive tasks. Practically speaking, it's important to note that no one is totally left brain or right brain dominant. Just as you have a dominant hand, dominant eye, and even a dominant foot, you probably have a dominant side of the brain. Secondly, ideally, you can work to utilize both sides of your brain. Most individuals have a distinctive preference so that one side of the brain tends to more strongly influence their thinking. Some of us, however, are more whole-brained and equally adept in both modes. What happens in our brains? Let's take a look at our different brain wave states. Delta wave, 0.1 through 4 hertz. Delta is associated with sleep. Our bodies naturally heal and repairs itself during sleep in the delta mode. Theta, however, 4 through 7 hertz is often referred to as the meditative, problem-solving, or intuitive state. Alpha wave, 7.5 to 12.5 hertz, is considered our creative, happy state where we are relaxed and more receptive. Beta wave, 13 through 40 hertz, is our wide awake state where we focus, concentration, and heightened alertness. Takes place in the beta wave. We all have our very unique signature brain wave activity patterns. These patterns vary in levels over the course of a day as our brain modulates itself to match our activities. Amazingly, our body naturally synchronizes with the frequency it is exposed to. Imagine being at Times Square on New Year's or in a loud disco. I bet you can almost feel the high energy and chaos. Now imagine yourself on a beautiful beach on the warm sand under the shade of a gently swaying palm tree. The ocean waves are gently kissing the shore. You feel so relaxed and you find yourself wondering why you don't do this more often. Your body naturally synchronizes with the frequency it is exposed to. Excuse me. The energy frequency in Times Square on New Year's is closer to 40 hertz than 13 hertz. You feel charged up. At the beach, your body synchronizes with the frequency of the ocean that is about 10 hertz, which is also the same frequency as alpha, so you feel relaxed. Now imagine that you're in a quiet space and you're very relaxed as you start to clear your mind to meditate. As you relax, you let go of all the tension in your mind and body, and you quickly and easily reach the brainwave state of theta. Now, I am guessing that not many of you would agree that reaching theta is quick and easy. In fact, I bet most of you think it is extremely difficult and takes tons of time. Theta is a very important brainwave state. We must all pass through theta for about 45 minutes before we go to sleep at night, and again in the morning before we wake up. During this time, we organize and clear our thoughts from the day. As we get older, many of us find that it is harder and harder to relax and easily drop into theta and get a great night's sleep. Let's explore how the different brainwave frequencies can work for you. We all know the term being in the zone, but how can it help you? Did you ever think that being in the zone might be just what you needed for super learning or to excel in business, sports, or even life, but then realized that there was no set of instructions that could tell you where to find the zone and then activate it and then achieve your desired outcome? Frustrating, right? But then you know that it must exist, but obviously there must be a missing ingredient that you haven't found quite yet. After all, Tiger Woods seemed to lost his ability to get into the zone. He was a perfect example of getting into the zone previously, but now he seems to be having a little bit of problems, to which everyone was surprised and disappointed. Using neuroscience, Chris Burka and her team at neurotech startup Advanced Brain Monitoring have recently identified what the zone is and how to get into it. Using a champion archer as the test subject, the archer's brain was scanned before, during, and after taking a shot at the target. Just at the moment before the perfect shot was taken, the subject's brainwave activity changed dramatically. There was a sudden high-level increase in alpha and theta brainwaves. The arrow was released, and the perfect shot was achieved. The next part of the research involved monitoring the brainwaves of amateur archers. There was no brainwave change to an elevated level of alpha and theta, indicating being in the zone for these folks prior to shooting an arrow at the target. Then some training followed. The amateurs were trained to learn how to relax and recognize the different sensations when in the alpha and theta states. A buzzer on their collars was used to alert them that they were in the zone, at which time they let the arrow fly. The amazing results of the test determined that the amateurs could be trained 230% faster in speed and accuracy using the brainwave coaching protocol to achieve being in the zone. Now, just to let you guys know, I watched Chris Burka during her demonstrations of showing how the professional archer, when he achieved the alpha and theta states and he released the shots, he was perfect. And that was the ideal brainwave states that he got into before releasing the shots. And Chris Burka and her research team trained the amateurs along with letting them have the audible cue of the buzzing on the collar to let them know when they were indeed in the alpha and the theta state. And that's exactly when they released their shots. So it looks like basketball players and football players and even archers, when you are in the zone, you typically are so well connected to what you're doing that you don't even think about it, and more than likely you're going to excel to great heights when you're indeed in the zone, okay, or in the alpha and theta states. Moving right along, hypnosis opens our minds to brain hackers. Your eyelids are getting heavy. Your arms are going limp, and you feel like you're floating through space. The power of hypnosis to alter your brain and body like this is all thanks to changes in a few specific areas of the brain. Researchers at the Stanford University School of Medicine have discovered. Let's see. The scientists scanned the brains of 57 people during guided hypnosis sessions similar to those that might be used clinically to treat anxiety, pain, or trauma. Distinct sections of the brain have altered activity and connectivity while someone is hypnotized. They reported in a study published online July 28th in cerebral cortex. Now that we know which brain regions are involved, we may be able to use this knowledge to alter someone's capacity to be hypnotized or the effectiveness of hypnosis for problems like pain control, said the study's senior author, David Spiegel, MD, professor and associate chair of psychiatry and behavioral sciences, a serious science. For some people, hypnosis is associated with loss of control or stage tricks, but doctors like Spiegel know it to be a serious science, revealing the brain's ability to heal medical and psychiatric conditions. Hypnosis is the oldest Western form of psychotherapy, but it's been tarred with the brush of dangling watches and purple capes, said Spiegel. In fact, it's a very powerful means of changing the way we use our minds to control perception and our bodies. Despite a growing appreciation of the clinical potential of hypnosis, though, little is known about how it works at a physiological level. While researchers have previously scanned the brains of people undergoing hypnosis, those studies have been designed to pinpoint the effects of hypnosis on pain, vision, and other forms of perception, and not the state of hypnosis itself. There has not been any studies in which the goal was to simply ask what's going on in the brain when you're hypnotized, says Spiegel. Finding the most susceptible. To study hypnosis itself, researchers first had to find people who could or couldn't be hypnotized. Only about 10% of the population is generally categorized as highly hypnotizable, while others are less able to enter the trance-like state of hypnosis. Spiegel and his colleagues screened 545 healthy participants and found 36 people who consistently scored high on tests of hypnotizability, as well as 21 control subjects who scored on the extreme low end of the scales. Then they observed the brains of those 57 participants using functional magnetic resonance imaging, which measures brain activity by detecting changes in blood flow. Each person was scanned under 4 different conditions: while resting, while recalling a memory, during 2 different hypnosis sessions. It was important to have the people who aren't able to be hypnotized as controls, said Spiegel. Otherwise, you might see things happening in the brains of those people hypnotized, but you wouldn't be sure whether it was associated with hypnosis or not. Brain activity and connectivity. Spiegel and his colleagues discovered 3 hallmarks of the brain under hypnosis. Each change was seen only in the highly hypnotizable group and only while they were undergoing hypnosis. First, they saw a decrease in activity in an area called the dorsal anterior cingulate, part of the brain's salience network. In hypnosis, you're so absorbed that you're not worrying about anything else, Spiegel explained. Secondly, they saw an increase in connections between 2 other areas of the brain, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and the insula. He described this as a body-brain connection that helps the brain process and control what's going on in the body. Finally, Spiegel's team also observed reduced connections between the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and the default mode network, which includes the medial prefrontal prefrontal and the posterior cingulate cortex. This decrease in functional connectivity likely represents a disconnect between someone's actions and their awareness of their actions. Spiegel said, when you're really engaged in something, you don't really think about it. You just do it, he said. During hypnosis, this kind of disassociation between action and reflection allows the person to engage in activities either suggested by a clinician or self-suggested without devoting mental resources to it, to being self-conscious about the activity. Training pain and anxiety without pills. In patients who can be easily hypnotized, hypnosis sessions have been shown to be effective in lessening chronic pain, the pain of childbirth and other medical procedures, treating smoking addiction and post-traumatic stress disorder, and easing anxiety or phobias. The new findings about how hypnosis affects the brain might pave the way towards developing treatments for the rest of the population, those who aren't naturally as susceptible to hypnosis. We're certainly interested in the idea that you can change people's ability to be hypnotized by stimulating specific areas of the brain, said Spiegel. A treatment that combines brain stimulation with hypnosis could improve the known analgesic effects of hypnosis and potentially replace addictive and side effect laden painkillers and anti-anxiety drugs, he said. More research, however, is needed before such a therapy can be implemented. Moving right along, hacking our brains via our sense of smell. Ilana Hairston is a psychologist at the Academic College of Tel-Aviv, Yaffo, in Israel. She studies how the brain works when a person is sleeping. An experiment that Ilana conducted showed that a person's view of one another can be changed by an outside force. How it works. Computer programmers hack into secure systems using cracks, a way of getting around the security to private information. It turns out that human beings have cracks too. When we sleep, the brain blocks out all the information of sight, touch, hearing, and taste. Smell is the crack to the brain. The information from the sense of smell is passed to the unconscious when we sleep. In Ilana's experiment, the volunteer puts on sensors that record the brain activity and how the person breathes. Then Ilana trains the volunteer to associate certain sounds, like a man's voice, to a certain smell, like rotten eggs, while the volunteer is asleep. Ilana noticed that the volunteer's breathing pattern becomes sharp and shallow, indicating that the smell was bad. When the volunteer wakes up, Ilana played the same recording of the man's voice. The volunteer unconsciously starts to take sharp, shallow breaths. Example: it is time to vote for a new president of the United States. A person fell asleep and didn't turn off the television when a candidate is giving a speech. A mind hacker breaks into the house, puts a smelly sock under the sleeping person's nose. The next time the person sees the candidate, he or she relates the candidate to the smell of the smelly sock, and unconsciously the person dislikes the candidate but doesn't know why. Here's an extract from a script of the brilliant episode, Can Our Minds Be Hacked? Through the Wormhole with Morgan Freeman on the Discovery Science Channel. Freeman: could your sense of smell be a crack for a brain hacker? Ilana Hairston is a research psychologist in Tel-Aviv, Israel. Excuse me. Ilana is fascinated by what happens in our brains when we sleep. It began with experiments she did in her student days. Hairston: at the time I was working with animals, I could see that I would train animals on a maze and they would not learn. Clearly, I thought, these animals are very stupid. and then I go back and put them in the cage, come back the next day, and boom, they performed like they'd been practicing the whole night, and it just blew my mind. It made me realize we spend a third of our life asleep, and there's so much going on while we sleep. Freeman: Ilana thinks that our minds may be able to learn when we lose consciousness. To prove it, she's plotting to break into the sleeping mind. It's a job that requires her to first get past the brain's night watchman, the thalamus. Hairston: there's a part of the brain called the thalamus. What it typically does is going to clamp down on sensory information and stop you from waking up. Or if it says, okay, this is important information, you need to wake up. It'll cause you to wake up. So basically, make sure you guys understand, the thalamus limits all input going into the brain when you sleep, unless the thalamus says, okay. Thalamus has a weakness, as we'll cover immediately. The thalamus has a weakness. The sense of smell gets past the brain's defenses, particularly the thalamus, and opens the door up for sensory input. Okay, so let's keep going. Freeman: but Ilana believes there is a back door into the brain when we sleep, our sense of smell. Smell goes first to the cortex, and so it kind of bypasses this relay station. Basically, you can enter the sleeping brain without going through this relay station. Freeman: when we fall asleep, the thalamus acts like a watchful nanny. Our senses try to deliver information to the brain, but are turned away. Input from our sense of smell, however, has direct access, and once inside, sensory signals that are normally turned out during sleep can be snuck in. Ilana teamed up with research partners at the Weizmann Institute to hack into the minds of sleeping test subjects using odors. They hook up a test subject to a machine that can produce a wide variety of scents and then measure how deeply the subject breathes. The subject falls into a deep sleep, and Ilana and her colleague go to work. They release a pleasant perfume and immediately play a high-pitched tone. Later, they release the smell of rotting fish and play a low-pitched tone. The process repeats throughout the night until morning arrives. Hairston. So, we just got our participant out of bed, and he's not hearing or smelling anything, and we're going to present the tones alone without the smells to see if he responds to the tones. So, now we're just watching him breathing. Freeman. The subject had no conscious awareness of the odors presented throughout the night and has no memory of them now. But Ilana wants to see if this breathing pattern, his breathing patterns reveal an unconscious, visceral reaction to the high and low tones. She first plays the tone linked to the perfume. High-pitched tone plays. The inhale appears much bigger and wider compared to normal inhales. We pair this tone with a pleasant odor. Okay? Then she plays the low-pitched tone, the one that was paired with the foul stench. Low-pitched tone plays. Again, you can see the trigger of the tone, and he's literally holding his breath. The subject does not smell anything, but his mind reacts as though he does. He associates the high-pitched tone with pleasant, breathable air, and the low-pitched tone with foul, nauseating odors. The key issue here is also that he doesn't actually remember anything that happened during the night. He's not actually aware that his tone was associated with a bad smell or a good smell. He's just responding to the tone without any knowledge of what we expect him to do. Ilana believes that this brain-hacking technique can be refined and used to manipulate any unconscious mind. Hairston. And then the question is, can we do this with a more subtle paradigm, like training people during sleep? And I think the answer would be yes. Freeman. Take, for example, politics. Your support of one candidate might seem to you to be unswervable. But while you're sleeping, scent hackers could train your mind to associate pleasant or foul odors with just about any sound, even the sound of a particular person's voice. The next time you hear that voice, your newly learned subconscious reaction could turn adulation into disgust. Hairston. Because odors are emotional, I think we can modify our emotional responses to stimuli. So I think you could modify emotional responses and therefore modify behavior. Now this is very, very intriguing, particularly because, again, odors presented during the night while you're sleeping, for instance, open up the thalamus and lets in the ability to have that input cause you to react according to whether or not a low-pitched tone or high-pitched tone is going to be associated with something pleasant or not, something to make you angry or not. So again, the tones and the sense of smell carried over into the time when you're awake could very well trigger you to react in ways that you're totally not even aware of. And as mentioned, you have no recollection of what happened during the night. So while you were asleep, so you reacted to things during the daytime based upon what happened during the night, but you have no recollection. So moving right along, lighting up the brain, seeking deeper understanding of how the brain works. Edward Boyden, B-O-Y-D-E-N, develops techniques to study the brain and how it operates in finer detail. How is the mind formed, and what does it mean to be human? These are the questions that intrigue Edward Boyden, an associate professor of biological engineering and brain and cognitive sciences at MIT. To answer them, we need a much deeper understanding of how the brain works. According to Boyden, who leads the Synthetic Neurobiology Research Group at the MIT Media Lab, a laboratory, and the McGovern Institute for Brain Research at MIT. If we understand how the circuitry of the brain computes things like thoughts and emotions, it can help us to know more about what it means to be human, Boyden says. To this end, he and his group are developing techniques to allow neuroscience researchers to study the brain and how it operates at a more fundamental level of detail. Perhaps someday in the future, if we understand how the brain works, we would understand the nature of irrationality and strife. and other aspects of the brain condition. Boyden says it could help humanity gain for the better. Optogenetics pioneer. Boyden has pioneered the development of technologies such as optogenetic tools, in which light-sensitive proteins from algae and bacteria are added to neurons. This allows the neurons to be activated or silenced with pulses of visible light. The tools are now widely used among researchers attempting to understand which specific kinds of neuron in the brain are responsible for different aspects of behavior and emotion, such as aggression. Later, his team announced they had uncovered optogenetic molecules that allow neurons to be controlled by red light. Red light is very useful because it can go very deep into the brain or body, so it can activate or silence neurons distributed throughout large regions, Boyden said. Working with researchers at the University of Vienna, his group has also recently developed a system that can generate three-dimensional movies of the brains of small animals at very high resolution. So just so you guys understand, Boyden is taking proteins from algae and bacteria, and these algae and bacteria have one purpose in life or one function, and that is to react to light. So he's splicing the genetics into the brain neurons of the human brains, and he's triggering the off and on capability of these photosensitive algae and bacteria. He's basically putting into the brain a switching mechanism. So he's turning on and turning off various regions of the brain to further study in greater detail in conjunction with the red lights incorporated into the algae and bacteria. This lights up the brains in a red color, which obviously allows them to go deeper and deeper into the brain to visually see in a 3D image type of format what's going on. So this is very very innovative, but at the same time very scary. The system is based on a technology known as light field imaging. This creates 3D images by measuring the angles of light rays emitted by a sample. It can be used to image the activity of every neuron in the brain at once, giving researchers a much clearer picture of how different neurons work together to process and act on information. Novel approaches to imaging. To help researchers take a closer look at the individual molecules, wirings, and connections in the brain, Boyden this year unveiled a new imaging technique based upon the polymers used in disposable diapers. When a section of brain tissue is embedded in this dense polymer and water is added, the material swells, moving the biomolecules away from each other. This technology, called expansion microscopy, allows brain tissues to be studied in very fine detail using conventional microscopes, which are widely available and can operate at very high speeds. So basically, Boyden found something that's normally associated with diapers, and by taking a segment of the brain tissue and putting it into this polymer and adding water, the material swells up, enlarging anything that's on it, specifically the brain tissue, and instead of using MRIs and such, he's using conventional microscopes to analyze the brain tissue. So this allows a lot more studying and research to be done in environments where you don't have to spend a lot of time and money on the more expensive microscopes. Expanding the brain in this way also gives researchers the space to attach tags to different biomolecules. These tags could then be used to read out the chemical composition of the brain, he says, much as barcodes are added to packaging to mark and identify individual products. But it is perhaps when all of these techniques are combined that they could offer the greatest insights into how the brain works. They may ultimately help us find new methods to treat the 1 billion people around the world who suffer from brain disorders such as epilepsy, Parkinson's disease, and schizophrenia, Boyden says. If we can really map the brain with molecular precision and then probe neurons in the map with optical readout and control tools, he says, we could hunt down the control knobs in the brain